Well, thank you for joining me today. I'm sitting down with a man that many people are recognizable around Tahoma, including myself. I've grown up around him for the last 3 years. He is the video production teacher at Tahoma High School, and I've formed a friendship with this man for the last 3 years, and I'm very honored to be spending my time here today with him. And as I will be exiting Tahoma in the next couple of weeks, I feel that this is a good way to tie the knot on the last 3 years and a good way to wrap up my senior year and sitting down today with Mr. Haag. Thank you for joining me.
You're welcome.
So I want to first off ask, how are you doing today?
Good, good. Busy as always. End of the year, things are a little bit hectic, but we're good.
So I want to ask you, what motivates you every day? What makes you want to get up, come to work, be energized, do the same thing that you do every day as you have for the last 20 years, as you said, at Tahoma? What makes you motivated to come to work every day and have a smile on your face?
I'd say probably for the most part it's the kids. You know, I grew up, my dad was a teacher, and I grew up always saying that I'd never teach. And I went to college, got a degree in business and marketing, was going to do international marketing, got into the corporate world and absolutely hated it. At the time, my wife was a senior in college, and she was a head track coach at a local high school, same high school me and my wife went to, and I decided to start coaching track with her. So I started coaching track with her, and I really started enjoying hanging around kids and helping them learn, help motivate them, those kinds of things, and it just kind of grew on me. So after too long, I told my wife that once she was done with college that I was going to go back and get my master's in teaching, and I was going to go back and be in the high school classroom as well. So it literally is just getting the opportunity to experience students every single day and helping them learn and prepare for their futures. And it's not the same thing every day. Every day is different. Every day students have different problems, different issues. Every student has different personalities, so it's never the same day twice. It's never the same class period twice. I teach 5 now introduction to video production classes. A lot of people would feel like that curriculum it'd be tired just from teaching the same thing over and over, but there's so much individual interaction between me and the students that it's different every single class period, and no 2 class periods are ever alike, even though I might be teaching the same material. So I guess it's the kids, it's the students, and helping them prepare for where they're headed.
So I want to ask about you individually. I mean, what is the first thing that comes to your mind about you? Who is Mr. Haag? Who is Rick Haag? Who is that person that comes to your mind when you think about yourself?
Who's that person that comes to mind? I would say it's somebody who's very dedicated, somebody who's very, very loyal, and I think that plays out in both my personal life and my private life. I have a very tight relationship with my family, the people that I grew up with my, unfortunately all my aunts and uncles are dead, both my parents are dead, but we've kept tight bonds between me and my cousins and my sisters, and our family is very loyal to each other. That's bled into my immediate family right now. I've been married to my wife for going on 28 years now. Again, same thing, very loyal to her and to relationships, as well as to my kids. In my professional life, I was always wanting to find a school that I could call home and a program that I could make my own and have impact on students in my own way. And now, this is 23 years of teaching, 21 years at Tahoma. So again, I'm a very loyal Tahoma educator, a very loyal bear. And then very loyal to my students as well, both while I'm mentoring them in school as well as that continues out of school. So I guess that's what I would say are my main characteristics.
So let's go back, decades from now. What were you like as a young lad, as some would say? What was it like growing up in rural Eastern Washington? Because that's where you're from, right?
I grew up kind of rural, but in the town, in the city, it's different city than it is here, but in the city as well. I don't know, I wasn't very focused. I wasn't a great high school student. I played basketball 6-7 days a week for 5 or 6 or 7 years. I mean, I started playing when I was in like 3rd grade. And that's what I lived. I just wanted to play basketball. I wanted to move forward in that. And I wasn't a great student. I wasn't a class clown or anything like that, but I certainly wasn't somebody that was focused. It took a very special teacher to help me focus. So I don't know. I mean, we hung out, we played basketball, I went to classes. I wouldn't say that I did much studying or preparation in class. I wished I would have, in hindsight. There's going to be a lot of people that I teach now that are going to wish they would have paid more attention, done more things, been more engaged, but you can't do anything about those things in the past. You have to look at that and try and make changes to your future.
Did you know at that point what you wanted to do with your life, or was it kind of like a toss-up?
This is going to sound funny, and even a lot of people my age, some might get it, but most of them are going to go, what the heck he's talking about? I grew up in the Cold War era, and really from, the time when I was probably 5th grade till about the time when I was a 9th grader, I really didn't think I was going to have to worry about what I was going to do in life. There was going to be a nuclear attack. Between, we had us and Russia going, we had a Cuban Missile Crisis, all kinds of things that are going on. So I didn't think I was going to have to worry about what I was going to do after high school. We have Fairchild Air Force Base, which is not, a great distance from where I was at. So it was one of the top nuclear targets at the time. So yeah, I just wasn't very focused, didn't have a very good mode for moving forward. And it was literally a history teacher that I had my freshman year that kind of looked at me and said, he was a history teacher and a football coach, and he kind of looked at me at the end of my freshman year and went, you got to figure out what you're going to do with your life, because the path that you're on is not a path that you're going to want to live. I had C's and D's in all of my classes. I didn't really care too much about school and what was going on. And it was kind of at that point in time where I kind of woke up and went, oh crud, I better start figuring out what my path is. I didn't know what that path was yet, but I did know that grades were the driving factor to that path. But once you've already dug yourself into that hole, it's really hard, to bail yourself back out. So it wasn't until probably I think I was in college before I really decided that business and marketing was the direction I was going to go. The summer of my senior year, I worked with a gentleman pouring concrete. So I worked in manual labor. And I tell you what, I respect those guys who do that day in and day out, because it was hard work. And he was not nice. There was me and 2 other guys that worked for him. And we'd be down in basements, because in Eastern Washington they have basements. So we'd be pouring floors in basements, and we'd be down in basements, and he'd be up above with the cement chute. And he'd just be yelling at us, not appropriate words to say right now, but about shoveling that concrete around. And if we were moving too slow, that concrete bucket slipped out of his hands and we were covered in concrete. So he wanted me, at the end of that summer, he had a big job in Portland that he wanted me to come down and work with him on. And the money was really good money, at the time. And it was at that point that I went, you know what? I think I'm going to hold off on that. I think I'm going to go to community college and start that path. And I'll let you go ahead and go down to Portland and do what you need to do.
Yeah. So when you started college, because you went to Eastern University, right?
Well, I started with 2 years of community college. So I went to Spokane Community College for 2 years first. So
when you started college, what were your impressions of going there? Did you have any doubts at all of?
Again, I wasn't super focused at that point. I just knew that I didn't want to do manual labor the rest of my life, and that I didn't want to be swinging a hammer, and that just wasn't for me. For a lot of my friends, that was great. They loved it. For me, that wasn't it. So it was probably my very beginning of my freshman year that I decided that I wanted to go the business and marketing route, and that I really smartened up, not grade-wise and study-wise, but at least picking my path and choosing the classes that I needed to take. And I was smart enough to know which hoops I had to jump through and which hoops I really had to pay attention to. Again, I just wish I would have paid a little bit more attention to the classwork itself, because I think I was present a lot and got by a lot, but didn't do the amount of learning that I wished I would have, that would have benefited me in these past years.
Did you automatically think, did it come to your mind that you were going to become a teacher, or did you have a different career in mind and then eventually switch to becoming a teacher?
Yeah, no, I was, originally I wanted to do international marketing. That was my whole goal, was to do international marketing. And so as I was working in community college, I made sure I knew I was going to go to Eastern. That was where I was going to get my 4-year degree from. And I made sure that I knew all of the prerequisites for the business program, all of the classes that I could take at the community college level that would cover electives in my business and marketing, because I was going to double major in business and marketing. And accounting was still in there in my thoughts. But then I took materials accounting at Eastern, and I went, yeah, I'm not going that route. But so I just knew that I wanted to do that, and worked really hard to line myself up the best way that I could to finish in 4 years and get that degree.
So let's go back to the very beginning of your career. What was the beginning for you? When did it start for you, really?
Well, I guess the very beginning of my teaching career, I'm assuming you're talking about.
Well, like your career, yeah, basically.
Okay,
yeah.
So my teaching career, well, so I had my degree in business and marketing. I went and I worked in an international, in a local company who did international business. Found out real quick I didn't want to be in corporate America. Probably could have made a lot more money, but that just, it wasn't for me the way that the environment worked. So, like I said earlier, I started coaching track with my wife. Really enjoyed coaching, really enjoyed working with kids at that level. Then, in order for me to get into teaching, I went back and I got my master's in teaching. Well, the program was very new across the state. It was only the second year that this master's in teaching program had been provided in Washington. And the education programs were up in roars, because it was an 18-month program where you could get your master's and your teaching degree at the same time. And all the people in the college teaching world went, that's not enough time. They need because a real ed program, you start really when you're sophomore and take some basic ed classes, and then into your junior and senior year, that's all you take is ed classes. And they were very adamant that you couldn't do this in 18 months. Well, year one, they had a small contingent of students go through. There was like 4 students that went through, and I think only 2 of them made it through the program. So my year was the first year, and I don't know, we had like 15 or 18 students in my group. I lost track of what the question was, Carson.
Basically, what was the beginning of your career like?
Oh, okay. Okay. So, anyhow, so my career, unlike most people who do student teaching, they do student teaching for like 2 months. And it's a transition of your 2 weeks transition into the classroom, then you teach for like 3 or 4 weeks, and then you transition out for 2 weeks. And you usually are in the same class the whole time. Well, my program, since they decided that it had to be so rigorous, because how could you learn how to do this in 18 months, I ended up having to teach for a whole year. And if you look at business and marketing programs, which is what I was teaching at the time, there are a ton of classes. I mean, if you look at our business and marketing programs, you have accounting, you have business law, you have 4 or 5 different marketings, you have all kinds of computer applications. So in that year that I student taught, I taught for 6 different teachers throughout the year and taught 9 different classes. So it was a brutal, brutal experience, and had a wife and a new baby at home on top of that. So that was its own interesting thing. I taught from 7:30 in the morning till 3:30 every day. Then I coached, because coaching was what I loved. It got me into it. So I coached girls volleyball, I coached girls basketball, and then I coached track and field with my wife. So I'd teach all day, then I'd coach all afternoon, and then I had class Monday through Thursday from 6 to 10 at night. So, from 10 to 1, I'd do homework and then try and get some homework in on the weekends. There was obviously no time for a job. So that was the earliest onset of that experience into the teaching world. As far as my first job was down in Eatonville. Me and my wife would have loved to stay in Spokane, but our situation, she was a female PE teacher, health and fitness teacher who wanted to be in high school. There's only, 13 high schools in Spokane. So we used to say, those people die in those jobs. I was a business and marketing teacher, mainly marketing. There's only one of those per high school. So, literally after I left Spokane, it was 5 years before a marketing job even opened up. So we didn't have any choice but to move and come to this side of the mountains. And the job market being so tight over there, we literally jumped at the first jobs that was offered to us, which for both of us were the first jobs that we interviewed for. Eatonville was the first school I interviewed for. Got the job as the marketing teacher down there, and somehow taught more math than I did marketing when I'm not a math teacher, so that was interesting. And my wife interviewed here in Tahoma, and obviously got the teaching job here in Eatonville. It was not a strong system at the time. Kids are awesome everywhere, but the system itself wasn't very strong, much different than the system here. And I was looking for some place to call home, some place that I could hang my hat and feel that I could really build, something special, because marketing, just like video production, they're kind of one teacher programs for the most part. So you are the program. And I just couldn't see that happening in the current climate of Eatonville. So after 2 years there, they had a business ed marketing position open here, and I applied, and I was very fortunate that I was able to come this direction. So
let's switch to another topic. So as a father, did you ever find that your job as a teacher helped influence you raise your kids? Did you find it easier, as being a teacher, to help raise your kids?
I would say with my first daughter, I found it a lot more difficult, because my oldest daughter, Danielle, is developmentally disabled. So as a parent, but especially as a teacher, you have all of these expectations and aspirations for your child, things that you really want them to do, accomplish, experience. And it was about 5.5 that Danny was diagnosed. We had noticed issues long before, but that was a whole nother story, that the doctors just screwed things up for about 2.5 years. So finally, at about 5.5, she was diagnosed with all of her delays and development issues and whatnot. And even at that point, there was a lot of conversation from the doctors about, she'll outgrow this, she'll do this. So you just kept building these aspirations, but kept looking and seeing that she's not developing, she's not going where you want. So it was really hard to emotionally deal with that. And I think being part of a school system made that more difficult, because you saw students who were able to achieve what you wanted your daughter to have. But you eventually, by the time she was about 8, it was just to the realization that that's not going to be her life. And when we came to that realization, it was really, really hard, but at the same time, it lifted so much off of us. Because we kept trying to put expectations on her and started looking at what do we expect of ourselves so that we can provide the life that she can be happy and fulfilled in.
Right.
So the first one, absolutely not. It was very difficult.
Yeah.
Our second daughter, though, however, Miranda, I think it's probably actually even reverse. I think having Miranda has helped us much more understand the students that we have in front of us.
Right.
And again, it has to do with age, because now just about to turn 50, I'm so separated from those 18-year-olds. When I started teaching, I was a lot closer. I was 26. I wasn't very far away from them. I could understand that world, but now it's so separate that she really helped us understand a lot about students and what they go through and pressures and, stuff that happens away from school that as teachers we might not understand, or when it's not part of our everyday lives at home, we might even become insensitive to, not purposefully, but just naturally, kind of thing. But there was also, plenty of times where things that happened in school influenced what we said with her, what we did with her, expectations that we had with her. There was also, plenty of young ladies that I had that I could talk to her about situations that she was in, and they could kind of help me see how to deal with those situations in her and help her to grow and learn, from the environment that she was in. Because I think both me and my wife approached parenting, although we had completely different styles, the approach was the same in that it was about learning. It wasn't about what you did right, what you did wrong. It was about learning what you should be doing and how to look at situations and read them.
So I want to move on to your aspect as you as a teacher, your career. So according to a website called ratemyteachers.com, there have been, some former students of yours have left some compliments about you, going all the way back to 2004. So I just want to read some of them, and I think you're going to crack up at some of them. So he is by far my favorite teacher I ever had, inspired me to pursue a career in cinematography. He's super reasonable and patient, and he really cares about his students and their learning. He honestly cares about his students, and it shows. He's so friendly, and any student would be lucky to have him. He's great at what he does. He knows his subjects, and he can easily teach them. He's also very involved in the lives of his students. Great man. Haag is awesome, but don't piss him off. He gets mean. Make sure you know the meaning of the word respect. Haag is one cool dude. The guy's a nut, but everything about him is cool. Haag's an awesome teacher. He's pretty tight. He's totally cool. Just don't get him angry. So after hearing these comments, how does it feel that knowing that you're, as a teacher and a person, hearing these former graduates complimenting you, how does that make you feel? Does it make you feel that you've accomplished your goal at teaching these children, to go on with their lives and being, responsible and, into the big world on their own? Do you think you've done your job to the fullest extent that you can?
Well, I mean, first of all, don't think that teachers don't go read that, because they do. I've read most of those things, that are there. There's probably a couple that are new, but it's interesting, students' perspectives. Obviously you become closer with other students, with some students than you do others. I mean, I don't know what I have this year, 7 or 8 students that I've had for 3 years. There's obviously a much different relationship with them than there is with a first year student. Does that mean that I did my job? I guess that maybe that means I did my job for those people that left their comments. What worries me more, and maybe not worries me, but where I tend to think more is, what students didn't I help? What students didn't I give what they needed? How could I have better served them? A lot of these students, not necessarily all of them, because I know some of them who left comments, but a lot of these students are students who would have found their path without me. They would have found a different mentor. They would have found different pieces to move forward with. But there are some of them too who really needed somebody to find them and help them find a passion. They might not have started with video production as a passion, but because of the time and energy that we put into it together, I can't say it's because of the time and energy that I put into it, because there has to be time and energy coming the other direction as well. It allowed them to find passion and in what they were doing and in where they were going with their lives. So those things are fulfilling. Does it help make me feel that I've done my job to the fullest extent? No. Because you always look at that, you always look at a kid in the classroom who isn't taking the turns that you want them to take, and not necessarily in the curriculum, but in life. And you wonder, how can you reach out? How can you help them? How can you guide them? And sometimes you can, and other times you can't, because like I said, it's not what I do, it's what a pair of people does. And if they can't make that connection back, or if they don't have the drive or motivation to take what I'm putting forward, you can't force somebody into that. But it doesn't change the fact that I want to get to those kids. I refuse to give up on kids. I try and always base my decisions and base my conversations on what I think is best for an individual kid. And sometimes people will look at the things I do and say, well, you did this over here, but you're doing this over here. And not just students, these are professionals in the world as well. But what they don't understand is they're looking from the outside in, not from the inside out. They haven't been in the conversations, they haven't been in the classroom, they haven't been part of the interactions. So the decisions that I make is, I believe this decision is best for this kid, and I believe this decision is best for this kid. Yeah, they might feel like the same situation, but we're in different spots. There's different reasons. I know different things than the people on the outside. And sometimes people look at that and say, oh, well, that's unfair, because you're not playing by the same rules for everybody. Well, everybody's not the same.
But do you feel like that those that graduated years ago, do you think that you've created something for yourself, like so you're so easily recognizable that people maybe look up to you, or like even just will remember your face and remember you saying, I remember that teacher, I want to be like him, or because I know him because I like him so much as a teacher that I will remember him from years and years and years from now. Do you think that you've created sort of a legacy for yourself for these people?
That's a tough one, because that's not necessarily something that I want. To be honest, I don't. Those, like I said, those comments are awesome, but those aren't the world. What's the world is that they can take whatever it is that I was able to give and offer them, they can take that and go out to their life and do it. Whether it was a work ethic, whether it was motivational pieces, whether it was just understanding the job market, or whether it was, building a desire and aspiration around being in this industry. Of course it makes you feel good, but I really just want to help kids get out on their path. So when I see that kids are successful, and it doesn't have to be successful in this industry, it's successful in their lives, wherever they're going. Those kids that I had those relationships with, that feels good. There's so many other things that contribute to it other than, one teacher, one person, one whatever. But I love to follow the stories of my students after they leave. I'm a big Facebook stalker. I stalk a lot of my kids on Facebook. So one of the students who wrote one of those comments probably back in 2005, you know, he was so talented. His names are on a bunch of those trophies up there. And he could have been so successful in this industry. But he also knew where the money was. And he was very bright and very capable. He was one of those kids who takes all these AP classes. It happened to be my class, which I felt very fortunate for, that he chose as an outlet passion. And he was just so unbelievably good at it and so natural at it. But he ended up going to the University of Washington and getting a degree in computer science. He did pull a backup in animation at University of Washington, because University of Washington doesn't have a film program. But so anyhow, he graduates from, I think he made more his junior and senior year at the University of Washington working part-time as a programmer for Seattle companies than I made teaching at the time. Right. And, you know, he, at the time when he graduated, he was, you know, turning down low six-figure jobs to, you know, not even responding to them. But he ended up going to work for a startup company. And now that startup company was just bought by Snap. And so now he's a employee of Snap, and not a low-level employee of Snap, somebody who's probably going to retire, you know, by the age of 45 or so. Those are stories that make me feel just as good as, you know, I have a kid who I had an intro to video production. I had his two sisters too, loved the family. Ended up getting a communications degree out of Western, went down to LA to AFI and got a degree in editing, and now he edits feature films in Hollywood. You know, I'm just equally as proud as both of them, and love the fact that they were both my students. And what I take pride is in their ability to succeed, you know, when they leave Tahoma. Right. And it's not just me, it's not just my class, it's the whole system that we have here, right, which I don't think people understand.
Yeah. So you were one of the most easily recognizable staff members who works at Tahoma. You were constantly praised by your colleagues here, and that's a fact. And the tremendous respect that your coworkers have for you is so heartwarming and loving. How does that make you feel, knowing the tremendous impact you made on your colleagues and, you know, here?
Well, one, it makes me old, because that's why I'm so recognizable, because I've been around for so long. Not as long as some, but, you know, 21 years is a long time to be in a place. You know, my professional, there was a lot of growth of me professionally. Things don't just happen. And this is one thing that I really try and talk to my kids about and get them to understand about their course of the time with me, is that things only happen when you're intentional with them. And I was a huge type A personality. I was a huge guy who said early on in my career, this is the way it's going to be, and it's going to be my way, or it's going to be the highway. I said, this classroom's my classroom. The rules are mine. What happens is mine. You're going to do it the way I want it. Mm-hmm. When I'd be in meetings, this is the way I think it's going to be, and nobody's going to change my mind. Mm-hmm. Well, those are not very conducive to a learning environment. And it took some pretty harsh learning experiences and a lot of reflection on my part, and a couple pretty sad situations for me to really understand that and reflect on that and make changes to how I approach things to make me a much more positive team member, I guess I would say. I still am very opinionated, you know, in meetings with my colleagues and things. I'm still very opinionated. I still really, when I have something set in my mind, it's hard to change it, but I'm open. I don't try and overrun the conversations anymore like I used to. You know, it used to be, if I say it enough, that's the way it'll be, and everybody else will give up. You know, I've kind of let that go. I've really tried to stop and look from other people's perspectives. You know, my perspective is skewed based on what I see here. Their perspective skewed based on what they see. but being able to try and put myself in their shoes so I can at least understand where they're coming from. I still might not agree with it, but at least I understand it. I hope that that's helped, that's helped with my involvement, with my colleagues when we collaborate and we work on, whole school issues and those kinds of things. But my dad, one of the reasons I didn't go into education is my dad used to say, if I could go in my classroom and shut my door and teach my kids, life would be grand. But it's all the other politics that it takes to run a system, let alone a system as big as Tahoma High School or Tahoma School District. It's really easy to go in and shut your door and critique and complain about things that are happening outside. It's a lot harder to open that door and be part of trying to fix the things or address the things that aren't right. That's hard to do.
Do you think, if you retire 8 years from now, do you think you will leave behind a legacy that Tahoma will memorize? Do you think you'll be leaving an impact here?
First of all, I hope I can retire in, actually it's 7 years.
Oh, 7 years.
But, the reality is I'll be 56 years old. I can't draw my retirement then. You can't draw Social Security then. So, I'm going to have to do something. If I still enjoy teaching, if I still enjoy doing this, I'll keep doing it. Just on the retirement issue, what I really hope for is I will know when it's time to go. If I've separated so far from the students and I can't be impactful with them, then it's time for me to go. Whether I'm financially ready or not, I've got to leave the classroom at that time and find another way to make money until I can draw. So that's the first thing in regards to retirement. Again, as far as legacy, the legacy will be really short. Once my freshmen are gone, sorry, we have freshmen this year. Once my freshmen that I had that last year that I retire, once they're out of the system, the legacy's gone, right? There's nobody left, there's no students left in the system that remember you. So again, that's why legacy isn't super important to me. I had a teacher that I just adored. I taught with her for 10 years. She was awesome. She was a great friend. She was a fabulous teacher. But she just didn't feel fulfilled enough. She was an awesome teacher, but she didn't feel like she was doing enough to change the pieces that she wanted to change. Right. And she was contemplating leaving. And, my words to her was, there's always somebody that's going to come in and fill your spot. They might not do it as well. They might do it better, but there's going to be somebody that's going to come in and fill your spot. Nobody's irreplaceable. And I'm the same way. There will be somebody who's going to come in and fill my spot. Maybe it'll be a former student who will have some of the same ideas and some of the theories and take forth some things from what they got when they were in class. Maybe it'll be somebody completely new who's never experienced the Tahoma world before and the way we used to do it, and it'll be a complete new environment. But the reality is there'll be somebody to come in to take that spot. So any legacy that's there is very, very short-lived. You live on in your students and how they apply what you've taught them and what they've learned in your class, how they apply that to their future. That's where the legacy is, and that's where you live on. Do you have any plans for what you want to do after retiring? Do you have any long-term goals you want to accomplish? I would like to say that I have some great plans to change the world, to, have impactful things here. But to be honest, I just want to enjoy life. I want to travel. I want to see some things. I've never, I've traveled out of the United States. I've traveled to Mexico and Canada. I've never been overseas. I want to do some of those things. I want to get in our RV and travel the United States and see more of the United States. I want to me and my wife sacrificed a lot when we were younger for our jobs and for our careers. And I want to be able to enjoy some of that sacrifice. And this isn't really part of the question, but it's just another thing that's had a big impact on me. I grew up, my dad, like I said, was an elementary school teacher. He worked every single summer to make money, to put in the bank so that he would have this big retirement that he could enjoy and, you know, provide this experience for him and my mom. And my mom was a professional too. She was a vice president of a bank, and, you know, so she worked really hard as well. But as a teacher, you always think, well, during the summer you have time off, you know, yeah, you still focus on the classroom, but, you know, you get to relax, all those things. But my dad every year worked, whether it was putting siding on houses or building houses or doing something like that. And at the age of 52, he developed cancer and died at 54. So he worked really hard all of his life so that he could enjoy this time out here and never got to enjoy it. So part of my philosophy in my personal life has been, you know what, I'm going to make sure that I have what I need to be able to live life in retirement, but at the same time, I'm going to live my life. So fortunately, after about the first 10 years of teaching, we've been able to not work as much during the summer. We've been able to not have to go back and get a lot of schooling. We've been able to enjoy some of that summertime. And, you know, I kind of spend the money that I make knowing that I have my teacher retirement and hoping that Social Security will be there and, you know, that life will be what it is. But that's had a big impact on how I've lived my life over the last 25 years.
So, unfortunately, I want to switch to a topic that has hit a lot of us recently, unfortunately. Now, I know you don't like talking about politics, but it's a topic that, you know, it's been discussed since, you know, January, unfortunately, with the recent school shootings in Texas and, you know, in Florida. What frightens you the most, not only as a teacher, but as a parent, about this particular topic?
You know, I'm not really frightened because it's one of those things where it'll never happen here. Although, you know, you can see where it could, you know, just like every student. But I'm not one to live my life scared of anything, so I'm not really frightened. I'm appalled that as a society, we can't find a way to fix this problem. I don't think there's any one answer. You know, people always want to point one answer. It's gun control. It's mental health issues. It's you know, more attention towards mental health issues. It's preventing bullying and harassment. And, you know, it's a societal thing, and there's not one answer. But the sad thing is that all of these groups are so polarized that they just can't pull together and sit down at a table and have a rationalized discussion and come up with rational solutions, you know, because, you know, in this last shooting, you know, the whole gun debate in this last one, Dad had the guns legally, you know, so
that's right.
Having more gun control in that situation wouldn't have prevented it. But there's other situations where gun control would have prevented, you know, some of these things. So again, it can't be a one system or a one stem approach. It has to be, you know, it has to be talking about some gun control and how do we keep arms out of, or how do we keep arms out of youth's hands. It has to be about how do we identify individuals early in their lives who are socially, emotionally having issues, and how do we provide them that support? What are the recognition signs for young adults who might start to be radicalized? You know, we gotta attack it as a holistic and stop all of these individual approaches. I'd love to be the one that stands up and says, oh, I have all the answers, but I don't know how to make that go forth out any better than that. I will say one thing that I think makes this worse than anything else is social media. I have some friends from high school that I've had to defriend just because they can't let go of the politics behind it. Every social media post is about the politics, and it's all hammering one way. I'm not Democratic, I'm not Republic. I'm whatever I believe is the best decision for what we're looking at.
Right.
And sometimes that's a Republican standpoint. Sometimes that's a Democratic standpoint. I will say in recent history, it's been more Democratic than Republican.
Right.
But I wouldn't classify myself as either Democrat or Republican.
Right.
But there's so many people, both on the Democrats and the Republicans, who just want to stand up and beat brow, and that's all they want to talk about, instead of talking about the issues and what's causing and what's happening. And that to me is frustrating, and I guess that to me is what's fearful.
I just want to read a quick comment from a student called Paige Curry, who was a student at Santa Fe High School, and she told reporters last week, she said, right after the event, she said, "It's been happening everywhere. I always kind of felt like eventually it was going to happen here too. I wasn't surprised, I was just scared." Mm-hmm. What's your reaction? What would you say to a student who fears that their school could potentially be next? What would you say, sit down with that student, and what would you say to them?
I would say don't live in fear. You can't live your life in fear. I would say figure out how to look for the signs, how to best protect yourself in situations. What are things that you look for? Who are people that you should, I don't mean people, I don't want people to literally identify people, but I guess I'm really bad at analogies, and I make them and everybody tells me how bad they are. But let me put it this way. When I turned 40, I started riding street bikes. I grew up riding street bikes, and when I was a freshman, I about killed myself on I grew up riding dirt bikes, and when I was a freshman, I about killed myself on a dirt bike, and I literally put motorcycles away from the time that I was 16 till the time that I was 40. I mean, I may have been on a bike 5 times in that whole span. But when I turned 40, I had a feeling that I can control myself now. I couldn't control myself then. But then what became important is, how do I recognize what I can control, which is other people's actions while I'm on my motorcycle? Mm-hmm. How can I prevent that car from moving in on me? How can I prevent a car from pulling out in front of me? Well, I can't prevent that from happening, but I can recognize what might happen and be proactive to that.
Right.
So I guess I would apply that to these same situations. If you're really living your life in fear and afraid of that, recognize what are situations that I could be getting myself into or that I can see, and how can I be proactive to possibly stay out of those. Right. Now, is that going to do you any good if you're in a cafeteria full of kids and somebody comes in? No, but maybe if you've previously thought about exit routes, right, it might help you get out safely. Mm-hmm. So it's putting the intentional thought, not dwelling, because dwelling is not healthy, mm-hmm, but putting the intentional thought into what would I do if, and what are some things that I should visually be aware of. If I see this, maybe it's time to just remove myself from the situation, right, just in case, kind of thing.
Yeah. Do you find it concerning, not only as a teacher but as a parent, that there's little to no work being done to protect schools, to protect the students? Do you find it concerning from a parent standpoint, and also as a teacher standpoint?
Well, I don't necessarily agree with that statement. I can't speak for all of the other schools, but I know that they have systems like ours. We worked really hard on developing this school around what would be safe for kids. There was very conscious decisions about doors that kids would come into, what kind of access kids would have in and out of the building, how strangers would have to access the building, how the building was laid out, how the gates come down. There's a lot of thought put into that. There's a lot of thought and there's a lot of collaboration that happens behind the scenes with the school and the fire department and the police department and all of those things. So I don't think it's a fair statement to say that there's nothing being done. There's a lot being done. I don't think it's the school's issue either. It's a societal issue. Parents need to recognize it. Kids' youth groups need to recognize it. Kids' athletics need to recognize it. Communities need to recognize it. Local police need to recognize it. One thing that really aggravates me and irritates me is when people look at the school and say, this is the school's fault, this is the school's issue. Right. No, it's not. If a kid's being bullied and harassed at school, there could be lots of reasons for that. And again, right. This is just one small scenario. Maybe it has to do with things from home life. Maybe it has to do with things that happened in the community. If those spill over into the school, how is that the school's fault? I mean, yes, right. We need to try and recognize it and prevent it and all of that. But everything has just come so hard to land on the school that the school can't do everything, but in particular, I think schools that I know of and that I'm aware of are doing a lot to provide safety for students. You can't prevent everything. I don't think there's any way we can prevent everything, but I think the schools that my daughters have been involved in and this school in particular have done a lot to try and provide safe environments for their students.
So to tie this interview up on a good note, with graduation around the corner, does it make you feel emotional saying goodbye to the students that you've had for the last 3 years of your life and the tremendous relationships that you've built with them and you've created? Are you going to, is it something that you are not going to see that you feel for the rest of your life that you've created here?
It's always hard to say goodbye. And it's hard not to get emotional, but I try really hard to not get emotional because I don't think it's good for the kids. And it's certainly not good for me either. It doesn't give any less to those students, but it's time for them to move on. It's time for them to go experience whatever's next, whatever that career plan or post-secondary plan that they develop, that they're presenting in their senior projects. It's time for them to go do that. I don't think dwelling in the sorrow or sadness of leaving is good or healthy for them. So sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's really hard. Sometimes I have to turn away because some of these people I've seen every day for 3 years, and the reality is I won't see that person every day again. And yeah, that's difficult. But exciting at the same time.
Yeah.
Exciting at the same time. So I really try not to get emotional. It doesn't always work. But I really try not to be emotional in that way.
Do you hope that you will be able to catch up, obviously, with students, because you have been for many years with previous graduates? Do you think that seeing them go through the process after graduating, do you think that's exciting to see? It's something that that you got to take part in? Are you glad that you were able to see that?
Oh, absolutely. I have a big network of students that I keep in contact with. I don't push that contact because, again, it's not back to the legacy with me. It's about them moving forward. So as far as contact goes, a lot of it I'll wait for them to reach out to me, or at times I will, reach out. And again, it's different because you have different levels with each student, but sometimes I'll reach out And if they don't respond, then I'll just let it go, because they're going on and they need to break that tie and they need to move forward. But sometimes at the same time, they still need help in that transition. You know, as they're going into that first week of college, or they're just moving into that college, you know, dorm or whatever it is. You know, sometimes it's good to have that, hey, you're ready for this, you know, kind of word. Mm-hmm. So I don't even remember what the question was, so I don't know if I answered it or not.
Well, I know for a fact I'm going to miss you very, very much, and everyone I know terribly, because it's a place that you really spend for the last 3 years of your life, and you feel very a part of. And you know, once you break that tie off, you know, you see all these people, they miss high school and stuff. But I feel like, from a personal aspect, that, you know, Tahoma has really, really been a really big part for many students, and I'm sure you can agree on that part, that Tahoma's been very big, and it's very hard to break that tie off, you know, going on to other careers and stuff, you know.
Yeah, no, it's difficult. It's more difficult for some than it is for others, you know. But the reality is, the thing that we do from day one, when kids come in to that first year, you came in as a sophomore, now it's the freshman, your goal is, how can I hook them? If they're in my space, if they're in my room, I want to hook them, because statistics show that kids who are involved and engaged while they're in school have more chance of being successful. Mm-hmm. And success means lots of different things. Some kids, just success is being able to graduate from high school. Some kids, it's being able to graduate from college. Some kids, it's getting a master's. Some kids, it's making a particular amount of money. Whatever success is, the fact is that in high school, if you are engaged in something, you have a better chance of being successful and making it through. So every kid who comes through my door, that's my goal, is how can I engage them, because I know if I engage them, they have a better chance of being successful. Mm-hmm. If I don't engage them, then I'm letting them down and I'm hurting their chances of being successful. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, you know, and it's funny, sometimes people say, well, that's like manipulating people. And it's funny because first year video production, we watch, you know, the documentary Cutting Edge, and one of the editors makes that exact comment, is that people say to him, well, you're manipulating people's emotions. And his comment back was, that's what we do, that's our job. Mm-hmm. And that's one of my jobs, to manipulate people, to help them find their passion, one way or another. And manipulation is part of the learning experience. You just have to use it for the purposes of good, not evil. Yeah. You know.
Well, I know personally, from me, I want to thank you very, very much for the incredible 3 years that I've gotten to spend time with you, building a relationship and inspiring me to go into film and all this kind of stuff. And I feel that I hope this isn't the end, and I hope that there's much, much more to come. And I just want to say, this interview is probably one of the highlights of my high school career, is not only in video production, but as a journalist, you know. And I think it's an incredible opportunity to sit down with you and talk to you one-on-one, to, you know, get to know you better. And I'm sure that a lot of people have gotten to know you better over these past couple of years, you know, friends and students mm-hmm. that you've known. So, and I think this is a good way to end this year on a good note.
Well, that's good. I mean, I look forward to see where you go. Mm-hmm. You know, you have high aspirations. I have high aspirations for you. And I look forward to see the paths that you take as you venture out. So I'm excited to see what the future holds for you.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much for sitting down and taking your time with me.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carson.
I want to thank Kayla for helping us out, spending the time. You've been a rock star. So, thank you for joining me, everybody.